my name is Lorraine from D32 Business Network, and I've got the absolute pleasure of having a conversation about AI and the legalities of AI with Juan Perez of Quest Legal. How are you, Juan?
I'm great, thanks, Lorraine. Nice to chat to you again.
It's always nice to chat to you, and I was just talking earlier about how AI at the minute is the hot topic, right? Everybody's talking about AI and transitions. And then I was just talking to you before this, and you said you had just done a presentation for the Black Swan Group on AI.
That's right. It was the Black Swan Summit, which was a great summit, the first of its kind. It was held in Perth, but it had 1,600 delegates, all
Wow.
coming together from around the world to talk about technology. And of course, anything AI was hot topic, and also regulation around AI. But there was a lot on developing and emerging technologies and the challenges they come with. You name it, AI, blockchain, all of the emerging technologies were brought up. So they're talking about running one every year. It's been sponsored by the Australian and Singaporean governments,
Okay.
and creating a lot of collaboration across different industries within Asia and Australia. Really good summit.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And what did you, so you were presenting there?
I was on what they call a round table. I was on two round
Okay, okay.
tables. The first round table was called Defrag, and that was sort of the broad topic, but it was on sustainable AI innovation in a fragmenting financial system. So that was really interesting. And we
Yeah,
had about 8 experts around the table and a room full of people listening as we're talking about these hot topics. And then the audience had a chance to ask questions as well. It was really
fantastic.
interesting. Yeah, really good. The second one I did was on the role of RegTech in a rapidly changing world. RegTech being regulatory-based technology companies and businesses, and I'm on the board of the RegTech Association for Australia, which is
Fantastic.
actually an international organisation, and I was able to talk in not just that capacity, but as a lawyer in AI as well.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, Juan. What what came out so from the regulatory side of things or from the legal side of things, what do small business owners need to be aware of?
Okay. Well, the first thing is that when it comes to AI, um, it's evolving and at a rapid pace.
Yeah,
And some of the big takeaways that were coming out of the summit, but also in where I presented, was that AI as a tool is providing amazing opportunities for businesses, but also the risk of disruption in different industries.
yeah,
It's already happening. So if you think that, it's just something that's coming, you're wrong. It's already here. Um, and that it should be something that we're all embracing as business owners and as leaders. And it's a great tool. There's great tools out there. It should be something that's embraced, but it needs to be managed carefully because it does come with risk. And and therefore the major challenge with AI technologies is one of trust. And that is trusting its outputs, and trusting how it's being used, and trusting that it is being used for good and not for bad as well. That was a lot of the underlying messaging that came across through the summit too. Mm.
yeah. I was having a chat with someone else this morning around AI and how we should be embracing it, the exact same as you're saying. Um, but what they were saying is, it's been so easy because we can now do this cloning.
Mm.
And there was a story published just recently about a criminal, if you like, had impersonated a CFO by actually
Mm.
appearing at a meeting and
Yeah,
fraudulently getting the employee to transfer a couple of $1 million.
yeah.
So
It
these
doesn't
are some of the
surprise me.
crazy risks. right? And you think that might not happen, but I think we have to be aware that that can happen, because just as fast as AI is developing, the bodies around it and the security around it develop just as fast, but sometimes sometimes not fast enough,
Yeah.
to detect.
And I would say that that is definitely an evolving risk of seeing more and more scams, and um, a lot of those scams are based on AI tools now to identify vulnerable individuals and groups and target them with bots and agents that can actually accelerate the level at which they can be successful with these scams as well. So we're seeing that already. And actually, on that point, that was a big theme that was coming out on the summit, which was it's the tide moving now towards agentic AI, which is the use of agents which are able to be used by businesses and individuals to do their bidding. And it's so easy to create an agent now,
Yeah.
and so that's where AI, the focus is going now as well.
Mhm.
But then with that comes all sorts of different risks and issues. One example of a risk that was raised was, well, what happens if you have your own agent out there entering into contracts, say to buy a shirt or to buy a watch, and it's out there and it's got certain parameters and it's using your credit card to buy. Well, what happens when you die and it doesn't continue doing that? Because these agents are acting like they're your agent, right? They're actually acting as if they had a power of attorney to do what your bidding is. But what if it's out there doing even more? If it's actually creating contracts with third parties and entering into arrangements as if you were alive and you're no longer alive? Yeah. What's the end
Mhm.
date to these things? So what was really interesting, Lorraine, is some of the discussions that came up is that our legal institutions and structures really aren't quite ready for AI yet. And very hopeful that they'll catch up, but they're not quite there yet. And I can give you some examples of those if you like.
Yeah, on you go, because I can just imagine they're like the terms and the conditions for an AI agent,
Yeah.
you would feel would have to be so much more robust than they would be for a human contract, or you would have to have an AI ask an agent, what have I not written into this? And then it just becomes, head burst.
It get very confusing very quickly,
Yeah.
and complicated, right?
Mm.
But to give you an example, the New South Wales Supreme Court has recently issued, just this year, a practice guide on the use of generative AI. And just to quote, this is a practice note number 23, and it reads, um, and this is just some examples: lawyers must not input confidential, sensitive, or privileged client information into public AI chatbots or tools. When using commercial AI tools, you must review the contractual terms to ensure data security. Now, you would think like, well, duh, as a lawyer, you'd think you do that. But the fact that the Chief Justice of the New South Wales Supreme Court has had to put this out tells you lawyers haven't always been doing this, right? There's been mistakes being made out there. There's another one which is independent advice, and says AI can't reason, understand, or advise. And so lawyers are responsible for their own judgment and must not rely on AI outputs when advising clients. But AI technology is becoming more and more intelligent and able to essentially reason by producing its own outputs, particularly for agents. And in one more example, um, given the competence and diligence, given the potential for AI-generated content to contain inaccuracies, lawyers must verify all AI-assisted work to ensure accuracy and reliability. Now, this is because there have been so many examples of lawyers using AI to prepare for court, prepare affidavits and statements, or to find the relevant facts, relevant case law. And then because AI technology has to produce an output, it just creates random cases which don't even exist. And so we now have many examples of what are called hallucinations.
Really?
Yeah, where lawyers have been reprimanded by the legal practice boards and for incorrect use of cases that don't even exist.
I
It's
didn't
a
realize
serious issue.
that it had to produce an output.
Yeah, and that's why AI creates hallucinations as a result, because it doesn't like a void. It creates where it doesn't, where it may not have the information, right? And so then it becomes a case of, can you trust it? Comes back to this fundamental question of trust as well. Even copyright law doesn't recognize the legality of an output from an AI bot or from an AI tool. Section 32 of the Copyright Act defines a qualified person for copyright purposes to be an Australian citizen or person resident in Australia.
Wow.
Well, that's not a bot. That's not AI. And therefore, there's this whole question as to who even owns what you're creating, right? Through copyright. So the law hasn't quite caught up, Lorraine, to AI, and frankly, it needs to. Now, the UK has gone a little bit of a step beyond this. It's now changed the definition, and the author is taken to be the person who undertook the necessary arrangements for its creation.
Right. Wow.
But there's real implications here if we were to take a similar approach. So, AI systems don't die. So, and for us, copyright only is the standard 70 years after the death of the author, but AI systems never die, right? So when's the end date for copyright? Anyway, I'm kind of gone on a little bit of a tangent, but the overriding point here is that trust remains a fundamental issue with AI, and if you're using it, you really must ensure that it's a closed loop system as much as possible. So any information you're inputting into an open system, you have to assume could be breaching confidentiality if it's your client information.
Does that make a difference if it's a free account or a paid account, Juan?
So free accounts are usually open source, systems. So and the paid ones usually have a more stringent confidentiality and security measures, so that it might then be limited to information within your own ecosystem. So, for example, our firm is just on Microsoft Copilot, but the enterprise version, because that only allows access within our systems using our own information. And we only use it we don't use it for legal research. We're very stringent on how we're using it and the checks of that. So it's mostly for compiling information, for example, or summarizing a meeting. It's more streamlined. Yeah.
So is that I know we've only got a few minutes left, Juan. So for your
Yeah.
everyday business owner, is that the biggest takeaway for you? It's just make sure you're trusting the information, make sure you're fact checking your own information, if you
Yeah.
like. That's the biggest takeaway, and
Um,
protecting yourself around
I
that
can
copyright.
summarize it. Yeah, I can summarize it in the following five, I would say, major risks.
Right.
Okay, and that you just need to work through. The first one is that information accuracy.
Okay.
Check anything that an AI tool produces. And I can give you lots of case law on this, but as to where it's gone wrong, because there's been quite a few examples recently. Second one is what I just mentioned before, confidentiality, that you don't inadvertently breach confidentiality by inputting, say, an advice you provided for a client, and find that you breach confidentiality through that. And then there are ethical and legal compliance questions, and that relates to, depending on how you're using the AI tool, but also your agent, there could be biases embedded into it. And so the results that you're getting may be biased, slanted to a particular demographic or to
Yeah.
a particular style as well. And then we talked about intellectual property and copyright.
Yeah.
Just don't assume you own what's being produced
Yeah.
from a tool as well. And then the last one, very importantly, is accountability and liability. So, what happens if it does, the tool does create an incorrect advice or produce something which is wrong? Who's liable for that? And you have to go on the basis that you remain liable. You can't blame OpenAI
Yeah.
or Microsoft for a
Yeah.
mistake. You are liable as well.
Their
So,
terms and conditions will be complete. Yeah. No
yeah,
liability.
exactly. And so the big thing I would say is implement clear policies, have a strong AI use policy in place, and also maintain transparency, be clear on how you're using AI or not. And if in doubt, then limit your use of AI to those less risky, more administrative tasks until you have got all in place to protect you and your clients as well. That's probably, they're the biggest takeaways.
Thank you very much, Juan. Because I was on an earlier interview getting really, really excited about the possibilities, and then you got to balance it with, the level of care. I can see why you jumped on the board of the Black Swan Summit. It sounds very exciting. Stay ahead of the game. I'm
Yeah.
glad we can leverage your expertise, Juan.
Thank
So
you.
thank you very much for taking the time to share that with us today. It's going to land for somebody and make a difference.
I enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Lorraine. We'll catch you
Thanks
soon.
very much, Juan. Bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.